Hello everybody, how are you? We're down here in Washington, Pennsylvania, which is, I'm going to say, southwest of Pittsburgh. I think that's pretty close. And this is a fascinating area. This is so interesting about Pennsylvania, how it'll be flat and then they have the hill, and you can see the road cut into the side of the hill there, and the elevation. The elevation changes on changes a lot in Pennsylvania. Adds a lot of variety, adds a lot of vistas, and expensive real estate when you get it overlooking a major city like Pittsburgh. But here we are down in rural Pennsylvania, and it's a beautiful day, guys. I mean, this is the time of year where it's nice and cool. And it gets a little chilly at night, right? But it helps you sleep. It's great. So this video is 3 fun facts about Washington, Pennsylvania. Now, these are not things that I know personally. I'm not from this area. I'm an Ohioan and Californian. But I learned these fun facts from a guy in a Pennsylvania, it says, "I love Pennsylvania" t-shirt. That was behind me at the Dunkin' Donuts this morning. We were talking about this area, and he said Washington, Pennsylvania is actually named after George Washington. I said, come on. And he said, no, Washington came down this way he was looking for a what at that time they thought was going to be a Western White House. So they had the Washington, D.C., and they had the White House set up there. And that's where he and Martha slept, of course. And then they were looking up. This far west, in today's terms, is not that far. You get on the interstate, and you can get down here from Washington, D.C. in a few hours. And by plane, even faster. But in those days, it was a 3 or 4 week journey, and he thought he needed an outpost on the frontier. So not what they thought was the frontier. So not a fort, but more of a governing center, just much like at the White House, a seat of government. And they might have thrown up a outer fence with some soldiers walking the rails just to keep, unfriendlies at bay. So you could say it was a hybrid government center / fort. And they didn't have a extensive defense. They did have a moat. The guy told me they dug a moat around the what they called the Western White House. And the moat was about 15 feet deep and about 30 feet wide. And it was relatively quiet because by that time, a lot of the hostile people that might have attacked the fort had moved on, because they found that it was just too much trouble to deal with any turmoil here in Pennsylvania. So they moved on to Ohio, and so it was pretty quiet around here. So quiet, in fact, that George Washington, fun fact number 2, used to swim in the moat every morning. He would take laps around the Western White House when he visited here. He'd swim in the moat, and sometimes Martha would jump in there. And of course, it was a pretty modest time, but Martha was known as being kind of risque. She'd get in there naked. And I'm not saying naked, naked, no. She was, as they say in the South, naked, nekkid. And that's a whole new level of nakedness. So that's fun fact number 2. And then finally, fun fact number 3 is that because he made such an impact on the area and helped it grow, they named the town after him. They named the town Washington. Now, they were originally going to call it a hybrid in honor of Martha as well. They were going to call it Washington-Martha. And They did for the first couple of years. They called it Washington-Martha, and you actually had to say the hyphen. That's how they figured that would make it a more smoother name, and it was separated from anybody else that decided to name their town or their community Washington. Then they have Washington-Martha. If they put the hyphen in there, they'd be prepared already for competing towns. So for a couple of years, it was Washington-Martha. But then over time, some of the farmers in the area complained that they only had so much ink to write, or how a pencil was like $45 for one pencil, and so they had a protest one day at the Western White House. They said, "Man, the town's name is too long. We're using so much ink on the name and pencil lead that it's affecting our profits." One farmer said he had to plant a whole new level of corn up on this ridge. In fact, he had to build like another level of that ridge with dirt so that he could farm more land. He had to create more land and farm it just to pay for the pencils and ink that he was using to write out the town's name when he was writing letters to his relatives and mean letters to Washington complaining about this or that. So they shortened the name down to Washington. They took out the hyphen Martha part, and that's what it is today. And that's where we are, I believe. We're maybe not in the town, but we're near there. And man, fascinating. Again, I don't know this information firsthand. I learned it from a dude that was, he had on a shirt that said, the back of his shirt said, "Free Trump." And I've started to think, well, what do you mean? But sometimes you just don't ask questions. You just go with it. You just go with what people are presenting, and it makes life easier. All right, guys, pretty fascinating. Come back. We're gonna have a lot more cool videos.